The morning light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my studio apartment, casting geometric shadows across the drafting table where I'd spent most of the night. I rubbed my eyes, feeling the familiar grit of exhaustion, and pushed back from the half-finished architectural renderings scattered before me. My lower back ached with a persistent throb that had become my constant companion over the past few weeks, a reminder of the secret I carried beneath my loose cotton shirt. 4 months pregnant, and still, no one knew. I pressed a hand to my abdomen, feeling the slight firmness that had begun to show. The morning sickness had finally subsided, replaced by an overwhelming fatigue that made even the simplest tasks feel monumental. But I couldn't afford to slow down. Not when the Morrison renovation project was due in 3 days and represented the largest commission I'd secured since starting my independent practice 6 months ago. 6 months since Connor McKenna had handed me divorce papers across the mahogany table in his attorney's office, his expression carved from stone, his voice devoid of the warmth I'd once believed was reserved only for me. "The medical reports are clear, Claire," he'd said, not meeting my eyes. "You can't give me children. There's no point continuing this marriage." The memory still had the power to steal my breath, to make my chest constrict with a pain that felt physical. I'd stared at those papers, at the medical documentation attached, at the diagnosis of irreversible infertility from a specialist I'd never even met, and felt my world disintegrate. I hadn't fought him. What was the point? Connor McKenna didn't make decisions lightly, and he certainly didn't reverse them. In the 2 years we'd been married, I'd learned that much about the man who ruled Boston's Irish underworld, with an iron fist wrapped in expensive suits and charming smiles. Now, I traced my fingers over my stomach, over the impossible proof that those medical reports had been lies. The baby moved, a flutter like butterfly wings, and I felt tears prick my eyes. "Just you and me," I whispered to the tiny life growing inside me. "That's all we need." My phone buzzed on the table, disrupting the moment. A text from my assistant, Mira. "Don't forget the Ashford Foundation Gala tonight. You promised you'd go. Good for business, remember?" I groaned aloud. The gala. I'd agreed to attend weeks ago, before the morning sickness, before the exhaustion, before the reality of single motherhood had truly sunk in. The Ashford Foundation was one of Boston's most prestigious charitable organizations, and their annual gala drew the city's elite like moths to flame. Architects, developers, investors, all the contacts I needed to build my struggling firm into something sustainable. But it also meant the possibility of seeing Connor. My stomach twisted, and not from the pregnancy. Connor's legitimate businesses included several high-profile real estate developments, and he was a regular donor to the Ashford Foundation. The chances of him being there were high, the chances of me avoiding him all night were slim. I typed back to Mira, "I'll be there. What time?" "Doors at 7. I'll meet you there. Wear something fabulous." I glanced at my closet, at the collection of professional suits and simple dresses that had comprised my wardrobe. Nothing fabulous there, and certainly nothing that would conceal a 4-month baby bump. I'd need to go shopping. Another task to squeeze into a day already overflowing with deadlines and obligations. The Morrison project consumed my afternoon. I sat hunched over my drafting table, pencil flying across paper as I refined the details of a Victorian brownstone renovation. My clients wanted to preserve the historic character while modernizing the interior, a delicate balance that required precision and creativity. Normally, I'd lose myself in the work, in the satisfaction of solving spatial puzzles and breathing new life into old structures. Today, my mind kept drifting to the gala, to the possibility of seeing Connor's face again, to the secret I carried that would destroy whatever fragile peace we'd managed to maintain since the divorce. By 5 o'clock, my hand was cramping, and my lower back was screaming for relief. I stood, stretching carefully, feeling the baby shift inside me. I'd need to eat something before the gala, something substantial to counteract the champagne I'd be expected to sip and discreetly dispose of throughout the evening. The boutique 3 blocks from my apartment specialized in elegant maternity wear, though I'd never imagined I'd be shopping there as a divorced woman carrying her ex-husband's child. The sales assistant, a cheerful woman in her 50s with kind eyes, guided me toward a section of evening gowns. "When are you due, honey?" she asked, her hands already pulling options from the rack. "February," I answered, the words still feeling surreal on my tongue. February, when my baby would arrive, when I'd become a mother, when my life would change irrevocably. She held up a deep emerald gown, empire waist with flowing fabric that would disguise my bump while still looking sophisticated. "This would be stunning with your coloring. Try it on." In the dressing room, I slipped into the dress and caught my reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back looked poised, elegant, completely unlike the heartbroken architect who'd signed divorce papers 6 months ago. The emerald fabric brought out the green flecks in my hazel eyes, and the cut was forgiving enough to hide my pregnancy, while still making me look intentionally fashionable rather than shapeless. "You look beautiful," the sales assistant said when I emerged. "Someone special will be at this event?" I thought of Connor, of his steel gray eyes and the way they'd looked at me on our wedding day, full of promises he'd eventually broken. "Someone from my past," I said carefully. "Someone I'd prefer not to see." She nodded with understanding, asking no further questions as she rang up the purchase. As I left the boutique with my garment bag, I felt a flutter of anxiety mixed with something dangerously close to anticipation. The Grand Ashford Hotel ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and the subdued murmur of Boston's elite. I arrived fashionably late, hoping to slip in unnoticed and position myself near the architectural exhibits where I could network without drawing attention. Mira waved from near the bar, resplendent in a red cocktail dress that made her dark skin glow. "You look amazing," she said, air-kissing both my cheeks. "Very mysterious and elegant." "Thanks to you for forcing me to come," I replied, accepting a glass of sparkling water from a passing waiter and hoping it would pass for champagne in the dim lighting. The next hour passed in a blur of handshakes and business cards, discussions of upcoming projects and potential collaborations. I felt myself relaxing into the familiar rhythm of networking, my hand unconsciously resting on my stomach whenever I thought no one was looking. Then I felt it, the prickling awareness along my spine that meant I was being watched. I turned slowly, scanning the crowd, and my heart stopped. Connor McKenna stood near the entrance to the terrace, partially obscured by a marble column, but unmistakably him. He wore a black tuxedo that emphasized his broad shoulders and lean frame. His dark hair swept back from his face in that way that always made him look both civilized and dangerous. But it was his eyes that held me frozen. Those steel gray eyes that had once looked at me with love and now regarded me with an expression I couldn't read. Our gazes locked across the crowded ballroom, and time seemed to stop. I saw the moment recognition flared in his eyes, saw his body go rigid with surprise. His gaze traveled over me, taking in the emerald dress, the way I held myself, and then dropped to where my hand rested protectively over my abdomen. His face went completely white. I turned away quickly, my heart hammering against my ribs. I needed to leave, needed to get out before he could approach, before he could ask questions I wasn't ready to answer. I set my water glass on a nearby table and started toward the exit, weaving between clusters of conversing guests. "Claire." His voice cut through the ambient noise, deep and commanding, stopping me in my tracks. I closed my eyes briefly, gathering my composure, then turned to face him. He'd crossed the ballroom in long strides, his expression now carefully neutral in that way that meant he was working hard to control his emotions. "Connor," I acknowledged, proud of how steady my voice sounded. "I didn't expect to see you here." "I could say the same." His eyes dropped again to my midsection, then back to my face. "You look well." "Thank you. So do you." The banal pleasantries felt absurd given the circumstances, given what he must be thinking. A woman in a silver gown approached, looping her arm through Connor's with practiced familiarity. She was beautiful, blonde, elegant, everything I wasn't. "There you are, darling," she purred, before noticing me. "Oh, I'm sorry. Am I interrupting?" "Siobhan, this is Claire," Connor said, his voice tight. "My ex-wife. Claire, Siobhan Brennan." His fiancée. I'd heard rumors, of course. Siobhan Brennan, daughter of Liam Brennan, head of another prominent Irish family in Boston. A strategic alliance disguised as romance. Exactly the kind of arrangement that made sense in Connor's world. "Lovely to meet you," I managed, extending my hand. Siobhan's eyes swept over me with cool assessment, lingering on my stomach before returning to my face with a knowing smile. "Charming," she said, though her tone suggested she found me anything but. "Connor's told me so little about you." "There's not much to tell," I replied, already backing away. "If you'll excuse me, I have an early morning tomorrow." I didn't wait for a response, turning and walking as quickly as dignity allowed toward the exit. My hands were shaking as I retrieved my coat from the check, as I stepped out into the cool October night, as I raised my arm to hail a cab. "Claire, wait!" Connor's hand caught my elbow, gentle but insistent. I whirled to face him, anger and fear warring in my chest. "Don't," I said sharply, pulling my arm free. "Don't do this. You're pregnant." It wasn't a question, but a statement, flat and certain. Very observant. "Is it mine?" The question hit like a physical blow, stealing the air from my lungs. I stared at him, at this man who had been my husband, who had loved me, or at least convinced me he had, who had thrown me away based on false medical reports. "What does it matter?" I asked, my voice breaking. "According to your specialist, I'm infertile, remember? So obviously, it can't be yours." Something flickered in his eyes, confusion followed by dawning understanding. "Claire..." "I have to go," I interrupted, stepping off the curb as a cab pulled up. "Congratulations on your engagement, Connor. Siobhan seems lovely." I climbed into the cab and gave my address, not looking back as we pulled away from the curb. Only when the hotel had disappeared from view did I allow myself to break, pressing my hands to my face as silent tears streamed down my cheeks. The baby moved inside me, a reminder of the impossible truth I carried. The child Connor believed I couldn't conceive, the child he'd divorced me for being unable to give him, now growing beneath my heart. And somewhere in Boston, Connor McKenna was standing on a hotel curb, his carefully constructed world beginning to crack around him. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment Connor's eyes had dropped to my stomach, the way all color had drained from his face. The shock in his expression had been genuine, undeniable. Whatever he'd expected to see at the gala, it certainly hadn't been his supposedly infertile ex-wife visibly pregnant. My phone had been buzzing intermittently since I'd arrived home. 12 missed calls from an unknown number. 3 voicemails I hadn't listened to. I knew, with bone-deep certainty, that they were from Connor. At dawn, I finally gave up on sleep and dragged myself to the shower. The hot water did little to ease the tension knotted between my shoulder blades. I dressed carefully in charcoal slacks and a flowing navy blouse that disguised my bump, twisted my auburn hair into a professional knot, and applied makeup to hide the dark circles under my eyes. The Morrison project wouldn't wait for my personal drama. My studio was in the Arts District, a converted warehouse space I shared with 2 other independent architects. It was small, barely profitable, but it was mine. I'd built it from nothing after the divorce, pouring all my pain and anger into creating something that belonged solely to me. Mira was already at her desk when I arrived, 2 cups of coffee steaming beside her laptop. She looked up as I entered, concern evident in her dark eyes. "You left the gala pretty abruptly last night," she said carefully. "Everything okay?" I accepted the coffee, even though I couldn't drink it, just to have something to hold. "I ran into Connor." Her eyes widened. "Oh, Claire. I'm so sorry. I didn't know he'd be there, or I would have warned you." "It's fine," I lied, setting the cup down on my drafting table. "It was bound to happen eventually. Boston's not that big." "Did he?" She hesitated, her gaze dropping to my midsection. "Did he see?" I nodded, unable to form words. Mira crossed the room and pulled me into a fierce hug. "What are you going to do?" "Nothing," I said into her shoulder. "There's nothing to do. He made his choice 6 months ago. This baby is mine, not his." "But Claire, he's the father. He has rights." "He has nothing," I interrupted, pulling back. "He divorced me because he believed I was infertile. Well, I'm not. And this child will be better off without a father who only wanted them for dynastic purposes." Mira looked like she wanted to argue, but my phone rang before she could. Unknown number, the same one that had been calling all night. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately, and again. On the 4th call, Mira gently took the phone from my hand and answered it. Claire Sutton's office. Her expression shifted to professional coolness. "Yes, Mr. McKenna, she's here. 1 moment, please." She covered the mouthpiece. "He says it's urgent. Something about the Morrison Project." My blood ran cold. The Morrison Project. My biggest commission. My lifeline. What could Connor possibly have to do with it? I took the phone with trembling fingers. "This is Claire. We need to talk." Connor's voice was clipped, businesslike, devoid of the emotion I'd seen in his eyes last night. "In person. Today." "I don't think that's—" "The Morrison renovation," he interrupted. "Did you know I'm the primary investor in that property?" The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. "What?" "James Morrison is a front. I own that building, Claire. I've owned it for 3 years. And I'm seriously considering pulling funding from the renovation." Rage flooded through me, hot and purifying. "You wouldn't." "I would, unless you agree to meet with me. 1 hour. Neutral territory." His tone softened almost imperceptibly. "Please, Claire. I just want to talk." Every instinct screamed at me to refuse, to tell him to go to hell, to protect myself and my baby from whatever game he was playing. But the Morrison Project represented 6 months of work, a commission that would keep my studio afloat for the next year. Without it, I'd be ruined. "Where?" I asked through gritted teeth. "The Gardenia Cafe. Noon. Come alone." The line went dead before I could respond. I stood there, phone pressed to my ear, fury and fear warring in my chest. Mira watched me with worried eyes. "He's blackmailing you," she said flatly. "Yes. With your own project. Yes. That absolute bastard." I couldn't disagree. The Gardenia Cafe was a small bistro in the Back Bay, the kind of place that catered to ladies who lunch and young professionals on their break. Neutral territory indeed, public enough to prevent any serious confrontation, private enough for difficult conversations. Connor was already there when I arrived, seated at a corner table away from the windows. He stood as I approached, that ingrained courtesy he'd never quite shed despite his chosen profession. He wore a charcoal suit today, no tie, the top button of his white shirt undone. He looked tired, I realized, shadows under his eyes that matched my own. "Thank you for coming," he said as I slid into the seat across from him. "Did I have a choice?" I replied coolly, declining the menu the waitress offered. "Just water, please." Connor ordered coffee, then waited until we were alone before speaking. How far along are you? I don't see how that's any of your business. Claire. His jaw tightened. Please, just answer the question. 4 months, I said, my hand moving protectively to my stomach. Due in February. I watched him do the math, saw the exact moment he realized the timeline. We'd finalized the divorce in late May. If I was 4 months along now, in late October, that meant I'd conceived in late June or early July, after the divorce. His expression shifted, something like pain crossing his features before he locked it down. So it's not mine. I should have confirmed it. Should have lied, protected myself and my baby from whatever intentions had brought him here. But the words stuck in my throat, and my silence was answer enough. Connor went completely still. Claire, tell me the truth. Is this baby mine? What does it matter? I asked, hating how my voice wavered. You made it abundantly clear that you wanted nothing to do with me. You handed me divorce papers and medical reports claiming I was infertile, and you moved on with admirable speed. Siobhan seems like a lovely strategic alliance. The medical reports, he said, leaning forward intently. Where did they come from? Who gave them to you? I frowned at the odd question. Your attorney gave them to me. Dr. Harrison's assessment, along with test results from the fertility clinic. I never saw those reports, Connor said slowly. My attorney told me you'd been diagnosed as infertile and wanted a divorce because you couldn't give me children. He said you'd initiated the proceedings. The words hung in the air between us, impossible and yet horribly plausible. I felt the blood drain from my face. That's not what happened, I whispered. Your attorney said you wanted the divorce, that you'd received medical confirmation I couldn't conceive, and you saw no point in continuing the marriage. Connor's hand slammed down on the table, making me jump. The few other patrons glanced over nervously before quickly looking away. Everyone in Boston knew Connor McKenna, knew better than to stare. Someone lied to us, he said, his voice deadly calm in the way that meant he was furiously angry. Someone orchestrated this entire thing. But why? I asked, though pieces were already clicking into place in my mind. Who would benefit from... The Brennans, Connor said flatly. Liam Brennan has been pushing for an alliance between our families for years. Siobhan and I got engaged 3 months ago. 3 months. July. Right around when I would have conceived. You're saying someone from Siobhan's family created false medical reports to break up our marriage so you'd be free to marry her? The conspiracy sounded absurd, yet I'd lived in Connor's world long enough to know that such machinations were far from impossible. I'm saying it's the only explanation that makes sense, Connor replied, and I'm going to find out exactly who was involved and make them pay. The cold certainty in his voice sent a shiver down my spine. This was the Connor I'd glimpsed only occasionally during our marriage, the ruthless enforcer who'd built his empire through calculated violence and unwavering loyalty to those he considered his own. Claire. His hand reached across the table, hovering just short of touching mine. If this baby is mine, if we were manipulated into divorcing, then everything changes. Does it? I asked, pulling my hand back. You still married me for connections and heirs, Connor. That was always clear. You were never looking for love, just a suitable partner to build your dynasty. The medical reports might have been fake, but your priorities were always real. Pain flashed across his face, quickly masked. Is that really what you think? That I married you for political advantage? Didn't you? I challenged. Be honest with yourself, if not with me. I was the daughter of the late Patrick Sutton, architect to Boston's elite, well-connected if not wealthy. Marrying me gave you legitimacy in circles that would never have accepted the son of Finn McKenna otherwise. You're not wrong, he admitted quietly. That was part of it, in the beginning. My father arranged the introduction, suggested the marriage would be beneficial for both families. But Claire, what happened between us? That was real. I thought you knew that. I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to believe that the tenderness in his eyes during our wedding vows had been genuine, that the whispered words in the darkness of our bedroom had meant something beyond strategy and ambition. Then why didn't you fight for us? I asked, my voice breaking. When you received those reports, why did you just accept them? Why didn't you talk to me, ask me what I wanted? Connor looked away, jaw working. Because I'm a coward, he said finally. Because I convinced myself that you'd be better off without me, that you deserved a normal life with a normal man who could give you safety and peace. The medical reports felt like permission to set you free before my world destroyed you. That wasn't your choice to make, I said fiercely. I knew what I was getting into when I married you, Connor. I'm not some delicate flower that needs protecting from reality. I know that now, he said, his gray eyes meeting mine with raw honesty. And I've regretted it every day since I signed those papers. Seeing you with Siobhan last night, seeing you pregnant and beautiful and moving on with your life, it felt like my chest was being ripped open. The baby chose that moment to move, a strong flutter that made me gasp and press my hand to my abdomen. Connor's eyes tracked the movement, wonder and longing naked on his face. Can I? He asked softly, his hand hovering over the table. I should have said no. Should have maintained my boundaries, protected my heart and my child from the inevitable pain of letting him back in. But something in his expression, the vulnerability I'd rarely seen, made me nod. Connor stood and moved around the table, kneeling beside my chair. His hand, when it settled gently over my stomach, was warm and trembling slightly. We sat frozen like that, waiting. And then the baby moved again, a distinct push against his palm. The sound Connor made was halfway between a laugh and a sob. That's our child, he whispered. Our baby. Yes, I breathed, tears sliding down my cheeks. Our baby. We stayed like that for a long moment, connected through the life growing inside me, the walls we'd built crumbling in the face of something bigger than either of us. Then Connor's phone rang, shattering the moment. He pulled back reluctantly, checking the screen and cursing softly. I have to take this, he said, standing. He stepped away to answer, his voice dropping to urgent tones I couldn't quite hear. I watched him through the cafe window as he paced on the sidewalk, his free hand running through his dark hair in agitation. Something was wrong. I could see it in the rigid set of his shoulders, the sharp gestures. When he returned, his expression was grim. We have a problem. What kind of problem? The kind where someone just sent my men photos of you leaving your apartment this morning, he said, sliding his phone across the table. I looked at the screen and felt my blood run cold. The images were taken from across the street, zoomed in enough to show my face clearly, my hand resting on my visible bump. Time-stamped from this morning, just after dawn. Who? I asked, though I already knew. The Brennans, Connor said. Liam just called. He knows you're pregnant, and he's threatening to make it public knowledge unless I agree to certain terms regarding the marriage to Siobhan. Terms? Connor's expression was murderous. He wants me to deny the child is mine, to publicly discredit you and proceed with the wedding as planned. And if I don't comply— What? I demanded when he hesitated. He's threatening your safety, Connor said quietly. And the baby's. He's hired people to watch you, Claire, to make sure you understand the consequences of interference. The cafe seemed to tilt around me. I gripped the edge of the table, struggling to breathe. This is insane, I whispered. He can't just— He can, and he will, Connor interrupted. Liam Brennan doesn't make idle threats, and he has the resources to carry them out. He orchestrated our divorce, Claire. He manipulated both of us to clear the path for his daughter. He's not going to let an inconvenient pregnancy derail years of planning. So what do? I asked, hating how helpless I sounded. Connor's jaw set with determination. You come home with me, now. I can protect you at my estate in a way I can't if you're living alone in an exposed apartment. Your estate where your fiancé... Siobhan doesn't live there, he said sharply. She has her own place in Beacon Hill. The estate is mine alone, and it's the most secure location in Boston. You and the baby will be safe there while I deal with Liam. Deal with him how? Something dark and dangerous crossed Connor's face. However I need to. I should have been frightened by that tone, by the promise of violence it contained. Instead, I felt a fierce satisfaction. The Brennans had destroyed my marriage, stolen 6 months of my life, and now threatened my unborn child. Whatever Connor had planned for them, they deserved every bit of it. Okay, I said, making my decision, but I have conditions. Connor's eyebrow arched. Such as, this is temporary, just until the threat is contained. I'm not moving back in as your wife or your possession. I'm a guest with clearly defined boundaries. Agreed. And you tell Siobhan the truth, all of it. She deserves to know she's been used as a pawn in her father's schemes. Connor nodded slowly. That conversation won't be pleasant, but yes, she deserves the truth. And Connor, I said, meeting his eyes directly. I need you to understand something. Whether or not we were manipulated into divorcing, whether or not you have regrets, that doesn't automatically fix what's broken between us. If we're going to have any kind of relationship going forward, even just as co-parents, we need to rebuild trust from the ground up. No more secrets. No more decisions made for my own good without my input. I understand, he said quietly. And Claire, I'm going to prove to you that what we had was real, that I'm worthy of being this child's father. I don't expect forgiveness, but I'm asking for a chance. I looked at this man who had been my husband, who was the father of my child, who had broken my heart and was now offering to protect me from the consequences of his world. I didn't know if I could ever trust him again, didn't know if the love I'd felt for him could be resurrected from the ashes of betrayal. But for our baby's sake, I could give him a chance. One chance, I said. Don't waste it. Connor's smile was small but genuine. I won't. As we left the cafe together, his hand hovering protectively at the small of my back without quite touching, I caught sight of our reflection in the window. We looked like a couple, expectant parents preparing for their future together. The illusion was beautiful and heartbreaking in equal measure. Because somewhere in Boston, Liam Brennan was watching, planning, calculating his next move in a game where my child and I had become unwilling pieces. And Connor McKenna, the man I'd loved and lost, was preparing for war. The McKenna estate sat on 40 acres in Dover, just outside Boston proper, surrounded by forest and stone walls that spoke more of fortification than decoration. I'd lived here for 2 years during our marriage, but as Connor's SUV rolled through the iron gates, the property felt alien and intimidating in a way it never had before. Maybe because last time, I'd believed I belonged here. Now, I was simply seeking refuge. Mrs. Chen still manages the household, Connor said, breaking the silence that had stretched between us during the 20-minute drive. She'll prepare a room for you, whatever you need. I remember Mrs. Chen, I replied softly. The housekeeper had been kind to me, in her quiet, efficient way. I wondered what she'd thought when Connor had come home alone, when the divorce had been finalized, when Siobhan Brennan had started appearing in society photographs on his arm. The house itself was a sprawling Georgian colonial, all red brick and white columns, elegant without being ostentatious, Connor had inherited it from his father, along with the legitimate businesses that masked the McKenna family's true enterprise. Inside, everything was exactly as I remembered. The marble foyer with its sweeping staircase, the oil paintings of Irish landscapes lining the walls, the subtle scent of lemon polish and old wood. Mrs. Chen appeared as if summoned, her silver hair pulled back in its customary bun, her dark eyes taking in my appearance with one swift, assessing glance that missed nothing, least of all my pregnancy. "Miss Claire," she said, her accent still thick despite 40 years in Boston. "Welcome home." The words brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "Thank you, Mrs. Chen." "I'll prepare the blue room," she said to Connor, "unless you'd prefer—" "The blue room is fine," he interrupted, though something in his expression suggested he'd been about to say something else. "The master suite, perhaps. The room we'd shared during our marriage." Mrs. Chen nodded and disappeared up the stairs with surprising speed for a woman in her 70s. Connor gestured toward his office, a wood-paneled room off the main hall that had always been his private sanctuary. "We need to talk strategy," he said. "But first, are you hungry? Thirsty? Do you need to rest?" The concern in his voice was genuine, and it made my chest ache. This was the Connor I'd fallen in love with, attentive and protective, before everything had fallen apart. "I'm fine," I lied, though exhaustion was pulling at my bones and the baby was doing acrobatics against my ribs. "Let's talk." His office was unchanged. Massive mahogany desk, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, leather chairs that cost more than most people's cars. But he'd added something new since I'd been here last. On the credenza behind his desk sat a framed photograph I'd never seen before. Our wedding day. Me in my simple ivory gown, Connor in his tuxedo, both of us laughing at something outside the frame. We looked happy. We looked in love. I looked away quickly, unable to process the implications. Connor followed my gaze, then cleared his throat. "I never took it down," he said quietly. "Couldn't bring myself to." "Connor, I know we're not there anymore. Maybe never will be again. But Claire, I need you to understand what you meant to me, what you still mean to me." He moved closer, his gray eyes intense. "When I signed those divorce papers, I thought I was setting you free, giving you a chance at a normal life with someone who wouldn't drag you into darkness. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, and I've done some terrible things." "You should have talked to me," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "You should have given me a choice." "I know, and I'm sorry. More sorry than I can express." He ran a hand through his dark hair, a gesture of frustration I remembered well. "But we can't change the past. All we can do is move forward and deal with the current situation." I sank into one of the leather chairs, suddenly unable to support my own weight. "The Brennans. What exactly are we dealing with?" Connor settled into the chair opposite mine, his expression shifting to the cold calculation I recognized from business discussions during our marriage. This was Connor McKenna, the strategist, the enforcer, the man who'd built an empire through intelligence and ruthlessness. "Liam Brennan has been trying to broker an alliance between our families for years," he began. "My father always resisted. He didn't trust Liam's ambitions. But after my father died 3 years ago, Liam intensified his efforts. He saw an opportunity. To marry Siobhan to you," I filled in. "Exactly. A union between the McKenna and Brennan families would create the most powerful Irish organization in New England. Combined resources, combined territories, combined political connections." Connor's jaw tightened. What I didn't realize was how far Liam would go to make it happen. "The medical reports," I said. "He had them falsified. Not just falsified, created from whole cloth by Dr. Harrison, who's been on Liam's payroll for years. I've already had my people verify. Harrison never examined you, never ran any tests. The entire diagnosis was a fabrication. Rage bubbled up in my chest, hot and bitter. He destroyed our marriage based on lies. He did more than that, Connor said grimly. I've been making calls this afternoon, following the trail. My attorney, Richard Moss, the one who delivered the papers to both of us. He's Liam's cousin. He orchestrated the entire thing. Told me you wanted out. Told you I wanted out. Made sure we never actually spoke to each other about it. I thought back to those awful weeks after receiving the papers. I'd tried to call Connor, desperate to understand how our marriage had disintegrated so quickly, but he'd never answered, never returned my messages. I'd assumed it was because he couldn't be bothered to explain his decision to the wife he no longer wanted. You never got my calls, I realized. And you never got mine, Connor replied. Richard filtered everything. By the time I realized something was wrong, you'd already moved out, changed your number, started building your new life. I thought. He swallowed hard. I thought you were moving on, that you were happier without me. I was destroyed, I whispered. I loved you, Connor. I thought we were building something real despite how it started. And then suddenly it was all just gone. Connor leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Sandalwood, and something distinctly him. It was real, Claire. Every moment of it. I need you to believe that. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression darkened. Siobhan, he said, she's here. Here? At the house? She has the gate code. I didn't think to change it. Connor stood, already moving toward the door. Stay here. I'll handle this. But I was already on my feet, following him. No, if we're doing this honestly, then I'm part of this conversation. She deserves to see who she's really been engaged to. Connor looked like he wanted to argue, but something in my expression must have convinced him. We walked together to the foyer just as the front door opened without knocking. Siobhan Brennan swept in like she owned the place. Blonde hair perfect, designer dress hugging her model-thin frame. She froze when she saw me, her blue eyes widening before narrowing with calculation. Well, she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Isn't this cozy? The ex-wife playing house with my fiancé. Siobhan, Connor said, his tone flat. We need to talk. Oh, I think I can guess what this is about. She gestured at my stomach with a manicured hand. You're pregnant with Connor's child, and you think that changes something. How quaint. Your father orchestrated our divorce, I said bluntly, tired of games. He created false medical reports, manipulated both of us, destroyed our marriage so Connor would be free to marry you. Did you know? Something flickered in Siobhan's eyes. Surprise, quickly masked. That's a serious accusation. It's the truth, Connor said, and I can prove it. Dr. Harrison has already admitted to creating the reports at your father's request. Richard Moss confessed to filtering our communications. Your father played us all, Siobhan, including you. The color drained from Siobhan's face. She sank onto the settee in the foyer, her usual poise cracking. I didn't know, she whispered. I swear I didn't know about the medical reports. But you knew something, I guessed, watching her carefully. Siobhan looked up, and for the first time I saw genuine emotion in her eyes. Fear. My father told me Connor's marriage was ending, that you'd been unable to conceive and were divorcing because of it. He said it was an opportunity, that I should position myself as the perfect alternative, someone who could give the McKenna heir he needed. And you went along with it, Connor said, his voice hard. What choice did I have? Siobhan shot back. You don't say no to Liam Brennan. You don't defy him. I learned that lesson young. She stood abruptly, pacing. He's been planning this for years. Before your father died, Connor, Mine was already strategizing how to unite our families. When Finn refused, my father just waited for his opportunity. So you knowingly pursued a man who was still in love with his wife, I said. Siobhan's laugh was bitter. Love has nothing to do with marriages like ours, Claire. Surely you learned that. We marry for power, for alliances, for the good of the family. Personal feelings are irrelevant. They weren't irrelevant to me, Connor said quietly. And that's where your father miscalculated. I agreed to the engagement because I thought Claire had moved on, that she wanted nothing to do with my world. But I never stopped loving her. The confession hung in the air between us. Siobhan looked between Connor and me, something like resignation settling over her features. So what happens now? She asked. You call off the engagement, my father retaliates, and we all end up in a war that destroys everything? That depends on you, Connor said. Are you your father's pawn, or are you your own woman? Siobhan's spine straightened. What are you suggesting? Help us, I said, the plan forming even as I spoke. You said yourself you had no choice. Well, here's your chance to choose. Help us expose what your father did, and maybe we can all find a way out of this that doesn't end in bloodshed. You're asking me to betray my father, Siobhan said flatly. I'm asking you to do the right thing, Connor corrected. Liam's actions endangered Claire and our child. He manipulated all of us for his own gain. That's not family loyalty. That's tyranny. Siobhan was quiet for a long moment, her expression unreadable. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady. If I do this, I need protection. My father won't forgive betrayal, family or not. You'll have it, Connor promised. My protection, my resources, my word. And what do I get in return, besides survival? She looked between us. Because I'm not doing this out of altruism. I'm as self-interested as anyone in this world. Freedom, I said. Real freedom to make your own choices. Find your own path. Isn't that worth something? Siobhan's smile was sad. You really don't understand our world, do you, Claire? There's no freedom in this life. Only degrees of constraint. Then let's change that, Connor said. Work with us. We expose Liam's manipulation, prove what he did, and give you leverage to negotiate your own terms with your family. You won't be his pawn anymore. I watched Siobhan consider the offer, saw the moment she made her decision. She pulled out her phone and began typing rapidly. I'm sending you files, she said. Emails between my father and Richard Moss discussing the divorce plan. Records of payments to Dr. Harrison. Everything I could find in my father's private server. Connor's phone chimed as the files arrived. He opened them, his expression growing darker with each document. This is enough, he said grimly. More than enough to bury him. Then we're agreed? Siobhan asked. I help you, you protect me, and we call off this sham engagement? Agreed, Connor said. Siobhan nodded once, then looked at me. For what it's worth, I am sorry. I didn't know the extent of what my father had done, but I knew enough. I should have questioned more, pushed back harder. Your marriage ended because of my family's ambitions, and for that, I apologize. The apology was unexpected, and something in her eyes told me it was genuine. Thank you, I said quietly. After Siobhan left, Connor and I returned to his office. He spent the next hour making calls, his voice low and intense as he spoke in a mixture of English and Irish Gaelic to people I didn't know. I listened, learning more about the scope of his organization than I ever had during our marriage. Finally, he set down the phone and turned to me. It's done. Liam's people know we have the evidence. I've called a meeting for tomorrow night. Neutral ground. All the families present. This gets resolved in the open, with witnesses. What if he retaliates? I asked. Comes after us before the meeting. He won't, Connor said with certainty. Not now that we've made the evidence public among the families. If anything happens to us, it all goes to the FBI. Liam's smart enough to know he's cornered. I wanted to believe him, but fear still coiled in my stomach. And after the meeting, what happens then? Connor moved to sit beside me, close but not touching. That depends on what you want, Claire. I'm not going to make decisions for you anymore. Your life, your choices. What about the baby? I asked. You're the father. You have a say in their life. I want to be part of it, Connor said quietly. I want to be a real father, not just a name on a birth certificate or a monthly child support check. But I understand if you can't trust me enough for that. If you want to raise our child alone, I'll respect that decision. I placed my hand on my stomach, feeling the baby move beneath my palm. This child deserved better than a part-time father, better than the fractured relationship Connor and I currently had. But they also deserved parents who loved them, even if those parents couldn't be together. I don't know what I want yet, I admitted. Everything's happened so fast. A week ago, I thought I was going to be a single mother. Now I find out my divorce was based on lies. The father of my baby still has feelings for me, and I'm caught in the middle of an Irish mob power struggle. I need time to process. Take all the time you need, Connor said. You're safe here. Tomorrow we deal with Liam. After that, we figure out the rest. Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway, her timing impeccable as always. Miss Claire's room is ready, and dinner will be served in an hour. I stood, suddenly overwhelmed by exhaustion. I think I need to lie down. Connor rose with me. I'll walk you up. The blue room was at the opposite end of the hall from the master suite, a beautiful space decorated in shades of navy and cream. My bags, packed hastily before leaving my apartment under the watchful eyes of Connor's security team, sat on the luggage rack at the foot of the four-poster bed. There's a connecting bathroom, Connor said, gesturing to the door, and Mrs. Chen stocked it with everything she thought you might need. If there's anything else... Connor, I interrupted. Thank you. For all of this. For believing me about the baby. For protecting us. For... I trailed off, unsure how to articulate the complex tangle of gratitude and confusion I felt. You don't need to thank me, he said softly. This is my responsibility. My child. My world that put you in danger. I should be the one apologizing. We stood in the doorway, caught between who we'd been and who we might become. The air felt charged with unspoken words, with possibilities both terrifying and tantalizing. I should rest, I said finally. Connor nodded, stepping back. If you need anything, I'm just down the hall. And Claire? I meant what I said earlier. What we had was real. I'm going to prove that to you. After he left, I sank onto the bed, my hand still resting on my stomach. The baby moved, a gentle flutter that felt like reassurance. It's just you and me, I whispered. Whatever happens with your father, with the Brennans, with all of this, we're going to be okay. But as I drifted off to sleep, Connor's words echoed in my mind. What we had was real. And despite everything, despite the pain and betrayal and manipulation, a small, foolish part of my heart wanted desperately to believe him. Tomorrow we would face Liam Brennan and the consequences of his schemes. Tomorrow the truth would come out, in front of all the families, all the power players who controlled Boston's underworld. Tomorrow everything would change. But tonight, in this room that wasn't quite home, but wasn't quite exile either, I let myself hope that maybe, just maybe, something good could come from the ashes of what had been destroyed. I woke to morning sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and a moment of disorientation before memory returned. The McKenna estate, Connor's protection, the meeting with Liam Brennan that would happen tonight. The baby was already awake, pressing insistently against my bladder. I made my way to the bathroom, catching sight of my reflection in the mirror. Dark circles shadowed my eyes despite nearly 10 hours of sleep. My auburn hair was a tangle around my shoulders, and the oversized t-shirt I'd slept in did nothing to hide the obvious swell of my pregnancy. I looked exhausted and vulnerable, and nothing like the poised architect who'd built a successful practice from nothing. A soft knock at the door made me jump. "Miss Claire?" Mrs. Chen's voice carried through the wood. "I've brought breakfast. May I come in?" "Just a moment," I called, splashing water on my face and running fingers through my hair in a futile attempt at respectability. Mrs. Chen entered with a tray laden with food: scrambled eggs, whole wheat toast, fresh fruit, orange juice, and herbal tea. The portions were generous but thoughtfully chosen for a pregnant woman. "Mr. Connor said you didn't eat much yesterday," she said, setting the tray on the small table by the window. "The baby needs nourishment." "Thank you, Mrs. Chen." I settled into the chair, suddenly ravenous. "This is perfect." She hesitated, her weathered hands folding in front of her. "May I speak plainly, Miss Claire?" "Of course." "I am glad you have come back," she said simply. "This house was very sad without you. Mr. Connor, he was very sad. He tried to hide it, but I have known him since he was a boy. I know when his heart is broken." Tears pricked my eyes unexpectedly. "It's complicated, Mrs. Chen." "Love is always complicated," she replied with the wisdom of her 70-some years. "But a child makes things simple again. A child needs two parents who love them. Everything else you can figure out." After she left, I ate mechanically, my mind churning. The food was delicious. Mrs. Chen had always been an excellent cook, but I barely tasted it. Tonight's meeting loomed like a storm on the horizon, and I had no idea what to expect. I was rinsing my plate in the bathroom sink when another knock came, firmer this time. "Claire, it's me." Connor's voice. "Can we talk?" I opened the door to find him dressed casually in jeans and a black Henley that emphasized his lean, muscular build. His dark hair was slightly damp, like he'd just showered, and he held 2 mugs of coffee. "Decaf," he said, offering me one. "Mrs. Chen reminded me you shouldn't have caffeine." I accepted the mug, wrapping my hands around its warmth. "What did you want to talk about?" "The meeting tonight. I need you to understand what you're walking into." He gestured to the sitting area by the window. "May I?" We settled into the chairs, the autumn morning light casting shadows across Connor's serious face. He looked tired too, I realized. Tired and worried and determined. "Liam will have allies there," he began. "Other families who've benefited from his leadership, who see the McKenna-Brennan alliance as advantageous for the entire organization. They won't want to believe he orchestrated our divorce." "But we have proof," I said. "Siobhan's files, Dr. Harrison's confession, Richard Moss's involvement." "Proof can be explained away if people don't want to believe it," Connor interrupted. "They'll say we fabricated evidence, that Siobhan's betraying her father out of spite, that I'm making excuses to avoid a politically advantageous marriage. We need more than documents, Claire. We need to make them see the truth." "How?" Connor set down his mug, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "By you being there, visibly pregnant, undeniably carrying my child. By making Liam explain how you went from infertile to 4 months along in a matter of weeks. By forcing him to either admit his manipulation or look like a fool in front of the entire council. The idea of standing before a room full of dangerous men, putting myself and my baby on display as evidence in Connor's case against Liam, made my stomach clench with anxiety. "I know what I'm asking," Connor said quietly, reading my expression. "I know it's unfair to put you in that position, but Claire, you're the strongest evidence we have. You're the living proof that the medical reports were false, that our divorce was built on lies." "And if it goes wrong?" I asked. "If they don't believe us, If Liam convinces them we're the ones lying, then we have a war on our hands, Connor said bluntly. Liam won't let this go quietly. He's invested too much in the alliance with my family. If the council sides with him, he'll come after both of us with everything he has. I placed my hand over my stomach, feeling the baby's reassuring movement. What about protective custody? Could we go to the police? The FBI? Connor's expression turned grim. And tell them what? That my divorce was orchestrated by a mob boss? They'd want evidence of actual crimes, money laundering, racketeering, murder. Liam's too careful for that. He keeps his hands clean, works through intermediaries. Even if we could build a case, it would take months, maybe years. In the meantime, you'd be in danger every day. So we're trapped, I said flatly. We're in a difficult position, Connor corrected. But not hopeless. I have allies too, Claire. Families who remember my father's leadership, who respect the McKenna name. If we present our case properly, we can sway enough of them to isolate Liam politically, force him to back down, or risk losing everything he's built. I stood, too agitated to sit still, and moved to the window overlooking the estate grounds. The autumn trees were brilliant with color, red and gold against a crisp blue sky. It looked peaceful, idyllic, nothing like the dangerous world of power plays and manipulation that lurked beneath the surface. I need to understand something, I said, not turning around. Last night you said you still loved me, that what we had was real. But Connor, how can I believe that when you let me go so easily? When you didn't fight for us? I heard him stand, heard his footsteps crossing the room. He stopped behind me, close enough that I could feel his warmth but not quite touching. I've asked myself that same question every day for 6 months, he said quietly. Why I accepted those medical reports without question. Why I didn't talk to you directly, insist on hearing from your own lips that you wanted to end our marriage. And the truth is, Claire, I was afraid. I turned to face him, surprised by the raw honesty in his voice. Afraid of what? Of my world destroying you, he said. You have to understand, my father built this organization through violence and fear. I inherited that legacy, and with it, all the enemies who'd love nothing more than to hurt me by hurting the people I care about. When those medical reports came, when Richard told me you wanted out, part of me was relieved, because it meant you'd be safe. You'd have a normal life with a normal man who could give you children and security without the constant threat of violence. That wasn't your decision to make, I said, echoing my words from yesterday. I know that now. But at the time, I convinced myself I was being noble, selfless, setting you free from a life you never really chose. His hand lifted, hesitating before gently cupping my cheek. I was wrong. So wrong. And I've regretted it every single day. I should have pulled away from his touch, maintained my boundaries, protected my still healing heart. But the warmth of his palm against my skin, the sincerity in his gray eyes, kept me frozen in place. How do I know you won't do it again? I whispered. Make decisions for me. Push me away for my own good. You don't, Connor admitted. I can't prove it with words, Claire. I can only show you through my actions going forward. No more secrets. No more protecting you from choices you have the right to make yourself. Whatever happens tonight, whatever comes after, we face it together. As partners. The word partners hung between us, weighted with possibility. Not husband and wife, not yet. But something more equal. More honest than what we'd had before. Before I could respond, my phone rang from where I'd left it on the nightstand. Unknown number. My stomach clenched with instinctive fear. Connor's expression hardened. Let me answer it. He picked up the phone, putting it on speaker. Who is this? McKenna. Liam Brennan's voice filled the room, smooth and cultured with just a hint of Irish brogue. I thought I might be speaking to your lovely ex-wife, but this is even better. Saves me making 2 calls. What do you want, Liam? Connor's voice was cold, controlled. To discuss tonight's unnecessary dramatics, Liam replied. Siobhan told me about your little plan to expose my supposed manipulation. I must say, I'm disappointed in my daughter's disloyalty, but that's a family matter to address privately. You fabricated medical reports to destroy my marriage, Connor said flatly. That's not a supposition. It's documented fact. Liam's laugh was genuinely amused. Oh, Connor, you always were too sentimental for this business. Yes, I facilitated your divorce. I saw an opportunity and I took it. That's what leaders do. We make hard choices for the good of the organization. The good of the organization, I repeated, unable to keep quiet. Or the good of your ambitions. Ah, Claire. Still there, I see. How's the pregnancy treating you? The casual way he mentioned my baby made my skin crawl. 4 months along, I'm told. Remarkable, considering you were diagnosed as infertile. Almost miraculous. Almost like the diagnosis was false, I shot back. Doctors make mistakes, Liam said smoothly. Happens all the time. But that's not why I called. I'm calling to make you both an offer. A way to resolve this situation without tonight's unpleasantness. Connor's jaw tightened. I'm listening. You proceed with the marriage to Siobhan as planned, Liam said. Claire raises the child quietly, with generous financial support from the McKenna family, of course. Everyone gets what they want. You get your heir, Claire gets security. My daughter gets to be Mrs. Connor McKenna. The alliance between our families proceeds, and we all profit. You're suggesting bigamy, Connor said incredulously. I'm suggesting pragmatism, Liam corrected. Plenty of men in our world have arrangements like this. A wife for appearance and alliance, a mistress who provides what the wife cannot. Claire would be well cared for, the child acknowledged privately if not publicly. It's a reasonable solution. Rage flooded through me, hot and purifying. You want me to be Connor's secret baby mama while he marries your daughter? That's your reasonable solution? It's better than the alternative, Liam said, his voice hardening. If you insist on tonight's meeting, if you force me to defend my actions before the council, things will get messy. People will get hurt. Is that really what you want for your child, Claire? To be born into a war? Don't threaten her, Connor said, his voice deadly quiet. It's not a threat. It's reality, Liam replied. You think you can expose me without consequences? I have allies, Connor. Powerful allies who benefit from the McKenna-Brennan alliance. They won't take kindly to you disrupting years of planning over wounded pride and a mistress's pregnancy. She's not my mistress, Connor said through gritted teeth. She's my wife. Ex-wife, Liam corrected. Legally divorced for 6 months. The council will see this for what it is, a man making excuses to avoid an inconvenient political marriage because he's still sentimental about a woman who couldn't give him what he needed. We have proof, I said. Documents showing your involvement, payments to Dr. Harrison, emails with Richard Moss. Documents can be fabricated, Liam interrupted. Dr. Harrison will recant his confession. I've already arranged it. Richard has conveniently left the country for an extended vacation. And my daughter, well, Siobhan will support whatever story I tell her to support once she remembers where her loyalties lie. The certainty in his voice sent ice through my veins. He'd already countered our evidence, neutralized our witnesses, prepared his defense. We were walking into tonight's meeting with nothing but our word against his. Last chance, Liam said. Accept my offer. Connor marries Siobhan. Claire raises the baby quietly with McKenna financial support. Everyone walks away intact. Or proceed with tonight's meeting and face the consequences of defying me. Choose wisely. The line went dead. Connor and I stared at each other, the magnitude of what we were facing settling over us like a heavy blanket. Liam had outmaneuvered us. All our evidence, all our carefully gathered proof, worthless if the witnesses recanted, and Siobhan changed her story. "He's bluffing," I said, but my voice lacked conviction. "Maybe," Connor replied. "Or maybe he really has neutralized our evidence. Either way, we can't back down now. If we accept his offer, he'll know he can manipulate us indefinitely. We have to see this through." "Even if it means war?" Connor moved to the window, his hands braced against the frame, shoulders tense with barely controlled fury. "My father used to say that sometimes the only way to peace is through conflict. That tyrants like Liam only understand strength. If we show weakness now, if we let him dictate terms, we'll never be free of his control." I joined him at the window, placing my hand on his shoulder. "Then we go to the meeting. We tell the truth, show them what Liam did, and trust that there are enough good men on the council to see through his lies." Connor covered my hand with his, the gesture achingly familiar. "You're sure? Because once we do this, there's no going back. Liam will retaliate, and it won't be subtle." "I'm sure," I said, surprised by my own certainty. "I won't let him turn me into a dirty secret, my child into a shameful reminder of an inconvenient pregnancy. We deserve better than that." "Yes, you do," Connor said quietly, turning to face me. His hand came up to cup my face, his thumb brushing across my cheekbone. "You deserve everything, Claire, and I'm going to make sure you get it." The moment stretched between us, charged with possibility and the memory of what we'd once been. Connor's gaze dropped to my lips, and I found myself swaying closer, drawn by the magnetism that had always existed between us. His phone buzzed, shattering the moment. Connor stepped back, checking the screen and cursing softly. "What is it?" I asked. "Siobhan. She says Liam's locked her in her apartment, taken her phone and laptop. She can't get to the meeting tonight." His jaw clenched. "He's ensuring she can't testify against him." "Then we really are going in with nothing but our word," I said. "Not nothing," Connor corrected. "We have the truth. Sometimes that has to be enough." The rest of the day passed in tense preparation. Connor made calls, secured promises of support from allies, arranged for additional security. I tried to work on the Morrison project, my sanctuary of normalcy in this insane situation, but my mind kept drifting to the meeting ahead. By the time evening arrived, I was a bundle of nerves barely contained in a black maternity dress that Connor had Mrs. Chen purchase that afternoon. It was elegant but simple, the cut designed to showcase rather than hide my pregnancy. If I was going to be evidence in Connor's case, I might as well own it. Connor knocked at 7, dressed in a dark suit that made him look every inch the powerful leader he was. His eyes swept over me with an intensity that made my breath catch. "You're beautiful," he said simply, "and brave. Thank you for doing this." "For our baby," I replied, placing my hand over my stomach. "I'd face anything for our baby." "Our baby," Connor repeated, his expression softening. "I like how that sounds." The meeting was being held at the Brazen Head, an Irish pub in Southie that served as neutral ground for council gatherings. As we pulled up in Connor's armored SUV, I could see other black cars already parked outside, their occupants filing into the building with the grim purpose of men going to war. Connor helped me from the car, his hand settling protectively at the small of my back. "Stay close to me," he murmured. "Don't engage with anyone unless I'm beside you." The pub's main dining room had been cleared for the meeting, a large round table set up in the center with chairs for the council members. Perhaps 20 men were already present, all dressed in dark suits, all watching as Connor and I entered. The conversation died when they saw my pregnancy. Liam Brennan stood at the far end of the table, flanked by his lieutenants. His silver hair was perfectly styled, his suit immaculate, his expression one of benevolent patience. He looked like a distinguished businessman, not the manipulative tyrant who'd destroyed my marriage. "Connor," he greeted warmly, as if they were old friends. "And Claire, thank you for joining us. Please, sit." Connor guided me to chairs on the opposite side of the table. As we settled, I felt the weight of 20 pairs of eyes assessing me, judging me, calculating what my presence meant for their alliances and interests. "Shall we begin?" Liam asked, his tone suggesting this was a routine business meeting rather than a confrontation that could tear the organization apart. Connor stood, his presence commanding immediate attention. "Thank you all for coming. I've called this meeting to address serious allegations against Liam Brennan. Allegations of manipulation, conspiracy, and actions taken against the McKenna family for his personal gain." A murmur ran through the assembled men. Liam's expression remained pleasant, almost amused. "These are strong accusations, Connor," said an older man I recognized as Thomas Quinn, one of the senior council members. "I hope you have evidence to support them." "I do," Connor replied. 6 months ago, I divorced my wife based on medical reports claiming she was infertile. Those reports were fabricated by Dr. Harrison at Liam's request. The attorney who handled our divorce, Richard Moss, is Liam's cousin and deliberately kept us from communicating directly. The entire divorce was orchestrated to clear the way for my engagement to Liam's daughter and an alliance between our families. "That's quite a conspiracy theory," Liam said mildly. "Do you have any proof of these claims?" Connor's jaw tightened. Dr. Harrison confessed to creating the false reports. Richard Moss admitted to filtering our communications, and Siobhan provided documentation of payments and emails between you and the doctor. Dr. Harrison has since recanted that confession, Liam said smoothly. He admits he was coerced by threats to his family. Richard is unavailable for comment, having left the country for personal reasons. And my daughter, I'm afraid, is confused and upset. She's been under tremendous stress with the wedding planning. "Convenient," Connor said coldly. "All your co-conspirators either recant or disappear. Or perhaps," Liam suggested, "you're fabricating a conspiracy to justify breaking your engagement to my daughter. Tell me, Connor, when did you conceive this child with your ex-wife? Before or after your engagement to Siobhan?" The implication hung in the air. That Connor was the unfaithful one. That I was his mistress. That our baby was the result of an affair. "After the divorce," I said clearly, standing despite Connor's restraining hand on my arm. "I conceived in late June, weeks after our marriage ended, which would have been impossible if I were truly infertile." "Doctors can be wrong," Liam said with a shrug. "Misdiagnoses happen. It's unfortunate, certainly, but hardly evidence of conspiracy." "The timing is too convenient," Connor argued. "My marriage ends based on a false diagnosis. I get engaged to your daughter within months, and suddenly my ex-wife is pregnant with my child? You orchestrated all of it, Liam." "You're reaching, boy," Liam said, his tone sharpening. "Trying to find conspiracy where there's only coincidence and your own poor judgment. You divorced your wife because you wanted an heir and she couldn't provide one. Now she's pregnant, and you're experiencing regret. I understand. Sentiment can cloud judgment. But don't insult this council's intelligence by pretending there's more to it than that." The assembled men were murmuring again, and I could see some nodding in agreement with Liam's version of events. We were losing them, I realized with growing panic. Without Siobhan's testimony, without Dr. Harrison's confession, it was our word against Liam's. And Liam was a respected senior member of the council, while Connor was the younger generation. Potentially unreliable, potentially emotional. "I have a question," I said suddenly, loudly enough to cut through the murmurs. Every eye turned to me. "If the divorce was legitimate, if I really was infertile, then why did you have me followed after Connor and I split up?" Why track my movements, photograph me leaving my apartment, monitor my communications? Liam's pleasant expression flickered, just for a moment. I don't know what you're talking about. Yesterday morning, I continued, someone photographed me leaving my apartment. Those photos were sent to you, and you used them to threaten Connor, to force him to proceed with the engagement to Siobhan or face consequences. If the divorce was legitimate, if there was no conspiracy, why would you need leverage over Connor at all? Silence fell over the room. Connor was staring at me with something like admiration, while Liam's carefully constructed facade was beginning to crack. The girl is confused, Liam said dismissively. Perhaps pregnancy hormones. I have the photographs, Connor interrupted, pulling out his phone. Time-stamped yesterday morning. Sent from a burner phone registered to one of Liam's shell companies. And I have the recording of his phone call threatening Claire's safety, unless I complied with his demands. He played the recording, Liam's voice filling the room with unmistakable threats. The assembled men leaned forward, listening intently. When it finished, the silence was deafening. You threatened a pregnant woman, Thomas Quinn said slowly, his weathered face hardening. Whatever your grievances with Connor, whatever your ambitions for your daughter, you crossed a line there, Liam. She's manipulating you all, Liam said, his composure finally breaking. Can't you see? She got pregnant deliberately to trap Connor, to disrupt the alliance between our families. I didn't even know Connor owned the building where I was working, I said. I didn't know he was involved in the Morrison project. I had no contact with him for 6 months until I accidentally sent him my ultrasound photo. How exactly was I manipulating him from a distance? More murmurs, these ones less favorable to Liam. The truth was emerging despite his attempts to bury it, the pattern of manipulation becoming clear even without all our original evidence. Connor pressed the advantage. Liam Brennan orchestrated my divorce to position his daughter as my wife. When that plan was threatened by Claire's pregnancy, he resorted to threats and intimidation. He's been playing us all, using marriages and alliances like chess pieces in his personal game for power. The question before this council is simple. Do we tolerate that kind of manipulation among our families, or do we hold him accountable? The vote, when it came an hour later after intense debate, wasn't unanimous. But it didn't need to be. Enough of the council sided with Connor to strip Liam of his leadership position, to censure him for his actions, to make clear that threatening women and children was beyond the pale even in their world. As we left the Brazen Head, Connor's arm around my waist, I felt something release in my chest. Not quite safety. Liam would still be out there, still be dangerous. But vindication, at least. The truth acknowledged. Our story believed. You were incredible in there, Connor said as we reached the car. The way you turned his own threats against him. We make a good team, I replied, when we're honest with each other. Connor stopped, turning me to face him. Claire, I know I have a long way to go to earn back your trust. But I meant what I said. No more secrets. No more decisions made without you. Whatever comes next, we face it together. I looked up at this man who was my ex-husband, the father of my child, possibly the love of my life if we could find our way back to each other. In his eyes, I saw sincerity, determination, and something that looked achingly like hope. Together, I agreed softly. For our baby, and maybe, if we're lucky, for us too. Connor's smile was radiant, and when he kissed me, gentle and sweet and full of promise, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, we could build something real from the ashes of what had been destroyed. The weeks following the council meeting passed in a strange sort of limbo. Connor had insisted I remain at the estate, citing security concerns that I couldn't quite dismiss as paranoia. Liam Brennan might have been stripped of his leadership position, but he was far from powerless. Men like him didn't simply accept defeat and fade quietly into the background. I stood in what had once been a guest bedroom and was now being converted into a nursery, watching as workers painted the walls a soft sage green. Connor had asked my opinion on everything: the color, the furniture, the placement of the crib, honoring his promise that decisions would be made together. It was a small thing, perhaps, but it meant more to me than he probably realized. "The rocker should arrive tomorrow," Connor said from the doorway, making me jump. I'd been so lost in thought I hadn't heard him approach. "And Mrs. Chen is insisting we need a changing table with built-in storage. She's already ordered one." I smiled despite myself. Mrs. Chen had taken to preparing for the baby with the enthusiasm of a doting grandmother, ordering supplies and offering advice drawn from raising her own 4 children decades ago. "She's been wonderful," I said, turning back to watch the painters work. "Everyone has been. It's strange being back here, familiar and foreign at the same time." Connor moved to stand beside me, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Sandalwood, and something distinctly him. "Is it too much, having the nursery here? I know we haven't discussed long-term arrangements." "It makes sense," I interrupted. "Whether or not we—" I gestured vaguely between us. "The baby will spend time here. You deserve to have a space ready for them." The unspoken question hung in the air. What were we to each other now? More than ex-spouses, certainly. The parents of a child on the way, undeniably. But beyond that, the territory remained undefined, frightening in its potential. Connor's phone buzzed, as it had been doing constantly since the council meeting. He glanced at it, his expression darkening. "What is it?" I asked, recognizing the look. "Nothing for you to worry about," he said, the automatic deflection coming too easily. I raised an eyebrow. "Connor." He sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. "It's Liam. He's been making noise about contesting the council's decision, calling in favors, applying pressure to families who voted against him. My sources say he's planning something, but we don't know what yet." Fear coiled in my stomach, instinctive and protective. My hand went to my belly, now noticeably rounded at nearly 6 months. The baby responded with a kick, as if sensing my anxiety. "Should I be worried?" I asked quietly. Connor's hand covered mine, his palm warm against the back of my hand where it rested on my stomach. "I won't let anything happen to you or our child. I have security watching his movements, monitoring his communications. If he makes a move, we'll know about it." "That's not the same as being safe," I pointed out. "No," Connor admitted, "but it's the best I can offer right now. I'm sorry, Claire. I'm sorry my world keeps putting you in danger." I looked at him, really looked at him, seeing the guilt etched in the lines around his eyes, the tension in his jaw. Connor McKenna, who commanded an empire with ruthless efficiency, who made hardened criminals nervous, was terrified of failing to protect his family. Our family. "Stop apologizing," I said firmly. "I knew who you were when I married you. I knew the risks, the complications. What I didn't know was that you'd try to make decisions for me, push me away from my own good. That's what I can't forgive, Connor. Not the danger of your world, but the dishonesty of pretending I didn't have a choice in facing it." Something shifted in his expression, relief mingled with determination. "Then let me be honest now. Completely honest." "I'm listening." Connor took my hand, leading me to the window seat that overlooked the estate grounds. The November landscape was stark and beautiful, bare trees etched against a gray sky. We sat facing each other, knees almost touching in the small space. "I'm terrified," Connor said bluntly, "of being a father, of the responsibility, of everything that could go wrong. My own father was. He was a hard man, fair in his own way, but hard. He taught me the business, taught me to be strong, to never show weakness. But he never taught me how to be gentle, how to love openly. I don't know if I can be the father our child deserves. The vulnerability in his voice made my chest ache. This was the Connor I'd glimpsed only in our most private moments during our marriage, the man beneath the armor. You're already being the father our child deserves, I said softly. You're preparing a nursery, protecting us, trying to build a better future. That's what matters, Connor. Not some idealized version of perfection, but showing up and trying. And us? He asked, his gray eyes searching mine. What about us, Claire? Can there be an us again? Or have I destroyed that possibility completely? My heart hammered against my ribs. This was the question we'd been dancing around for weeks, the elephant in every room we shared. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me still loves you. That part never stopped, even when I hated you for leaving. But love isn't enough, is it? We need trust. We need honesty. We need to believe we're on the same team. Then let me prove it to you, Connor said, his hand finding mine. Not through grand gestures or expensive gifts, but through showing up every day. Through being present for doctor's appointments and midnight cravings. Through listening when you talk and respecting your choices even when I disagree. Give me that chance, Claire. Please. I wanted to say yes, wanted to close the distance between us and let myself fall back into the safety of his arms. But something held me back. A whisper of self-preservation. I need time, I said. I need to know this isn't just about the baby, that you want me for me, not because I'm carrying your heir. Pain flashed across Connor's face. Claire, I divorced you because I thought you couldn't have children. If this was only about an heir, I would have stayed married to you from the beginning regardless of what those fake medical reports said. I left because I convinced myself you'd be happier without me, safer in a normal life. The baby. His hand moved to rest gently over where mine covered my stomach. The baby brought us back together, but they're not why I want you back. You are. Before I could respond, raised voices echoed from downstairs. Connor was on his feet instantly, his body language shifting to alert readiness. Stay here, he commanded, already moving toward the door. Connor. Please, Claire. Just this once. Listen to me. He disappeared into the hallway, and I heard his footsteps rapid on the stairs. My heart pounding, I moved to the nursery door, straining to hear what was happening below. Told you she's not receiving visitors, Connor's voice, hard and cold. I don't need your permission to see my daughter. A woman's voice, cultured and sharp. Siobhan, stop being dramatic and come downstairs. Siobhan. She was here. I shouldn't have gone down. Should have stayed in the nursery as Connor asked. But something in Siobhan's mother's voice, the entitlement, the assumption of control, made my feet move before my brain could override them. The scene in the foyer was tense. Siobhan stood on the landing midway up the staircase, her blonde hair disheveled, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. At the bottom stood an elegant older woman, who could only be her mother, flanked by two large men in dark suits. Mrs. Brennan, Connor said coldly. You weren't invited. My daughter has been living here for 2 weeks, the woman replied. I think that gives me the right to visit. I descended the stairs carefully, one hand on the railing for balance. All eyes turned to me as I reached the bottom, and I saw Mrs. Brennan's gaze sweep over my obvious pregnancy with cold assessment. So you're the reason my daughter's engagement ended, she said. The pregnant ex-wife who couldn't leave well enough alone. Mother, stop, Siobhan said from the landing. This isn't Claire's fault. Isn't it? Mrs. Brennan's voice dripped with disdain. She shows up pregnant and conveniently Connor breaks his engagement. Your father was right to try to manage this situation. Your husband manipulated both of us, I said, keeping my voice level despite my anger. He destroyed my marriage based on lies so Connor would be free to marry your daughter. That's not management. That's conspiracy. My husband protected our family's interests, Mrs. Brennan shot back. Something you clearly don't understand, given you've spent the last 6 months living like a pauper while carrying McKenna's child. Where's your pride, girl? Your dignity? The casual cruelty of her words hit harder than I expected. Connor moved to stand beside me, his presence a solid comfort. You need to leave, he said, his voice deadly quiet. Now. Not without my daughter. I'm staying here, Mother, Siobhan called down. Father locked me in my apartment, threatened me if I testified against him. Connor offered me protection, and I accepted. I'm not going back. Mrs. Brennan's perfect composure cracked, fury blazing in eyes the same ice blue as her daughter's. Your father did what was necessary to protect you from making a foolish mistake. This man, she gestured at Connor. He's proven he can't be trusted. He's carrying on with his pregnant ex-wife while you're living under the same roof. How humiliating for you, Siobhan. For all of us. The only thing that's humiliating is how you and Father manipulated everyone like puppets, Siobhan replied, her voice shaking but determined. Claire and Connor were happy together. You destroyed that for a political alliance that benefited no one but Father's ambitions. We gave you a chance at a powerful marriage? You sold me like property. Siobhan's voice rose, years of resentment finally breaking free. I'm 26 years old, Mother. 26, and I've never made a single decision about my own life. Where I lived, what I studied, who I dated, all of it dictated by Father's grand plans. Well, I'm done. I'm finally done. Mrs. Brennan's face went white with rage. If you walk away from this family, you walk away from everything. Your trust fund, your inheritance, your place in society. Is that really what you want? To be cut off, penniless, dependent on McKenna's charity? I have my own money, Siobhan said quietly. Money my grandmother left me that Father can't touch. It's not a fortune, but it's enough to start over. And yes, that's what I want. To be free. I felt a surge of admiration for Siobhan. Whatever our complicated history, whatever role she'd played in the scheme that destroyed my marriage, she was showing remarkable courage now. Mrs. Brennan turned her cold gaze on me. This is your fault. You and your bastard child. You've ruined everything. Don't. Connor's voice cut like a blade. Don't you dare speak about my child that way. Your child? Mrs. Brennan laughed bitterly. How convenient that she's suddenly pregnant after being diagnosed as infertile. Have you even confirmed the baby is yours, Connor? Or are you so desperate to believe in this little fantasy that you'll accept anything she tells you? The accusation hung in the air, poisonous and designed to wound. I felt Connor go rigid beside me, felt his fury building like a gathering storm. Get out, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, but carrying enough menace to make Mrs. Brennan's bodyguards shift nervously. Get out of my house before I have you thrown out. You'll regret this, Mrs. Brennan said, already backing toward the door. My husband won't take this insult lightly. Harboring our daughter, carrying on with your pregnant whore. Connor moved so fast I barely registered it. One moment he was beside me. The next he had Mrs. Brennan's arm in a grip that made her gasp, his face inches from hers. If you or your husband threaten my family again, he said softly, each word deliberate and terrifying, I will dismantle everything Liam has built piece by piece, his businesses, his alliances, his reputation, all of it. And I will enjoy doing it. Do you understand me? Mrs. Brennan nodded, fear finally breaking through her aristocratic facade. Connor released her, and she stumbled back into her bodyguard's arms. We're leaving, she announced, her voice shaking. But this isn't over. Your husband will do nothing, Connor interrupted. Because he knows exactly what I'm capable of when I'm protecting what's mine. Now get out. After they left, silence filled the foyer. Siobhan descended the stairs slowly, her arms wrapped around herself. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I shouldn't have let her in. She said she just wanted to talk. It's not your fault, I assured her. Though I have to ask, why are you still here? You could have left weeks ago, found your own place with your grandmother's money. Siobhan's smile was sad. Where would I go? I've never lived alone, never had to manage my own life. I know it sounds pathetic, but I'm terrified of being on my own. At least here I'm learning. Mrs. Chen is teaching me to cook. Connor's teaching me about the legitimate businesses, and you... She looked at me. You're teaching me what strength looks like. The compliment was unexpected and genuine. I'm not that strong, I said. You are, Siobhan insisted. You survived my father's manipulation, rebuilt your career from nothing, and now you're facing all of this. She gestured at my pregnancy, the estate, the complicated situation we all found ourselves in. You're facing it with grace and courage. That's strength. Connor's phone buzzed again, and this time when he checked it, his expression shifted to something between alarm and fury. What? I asked, fear spiking through me. Security just reported a breach on the north perimeter, he said, already moving toward his office. Someone cut the fence, disabled 2 cameras. It could be nothing, could be teenagers, but you don't believe in coincidences, I finished. Not after Mrs. Brennan's visit. Get upstairs, Connor ordered. Both of you. Lock yourselves in Claire's room. Security protocol. Don't open the door for anyone but me or Mrs. Chen. Connor, please, Claire. His eyes met mine, raw with fear and determination. I can't focus on securing the property if I'm worried about you. Please, just do this for me. Siobhan was already heading for the stairs. I followed reluctantly, looking back to see Connor pulling a gun from the safe hidden behind a painting in his office. The reality of his world, of the constant danger, hit me like a physical blow. This was what I'd signed up for. This was the price of loving Connor McKenna. In my room, Siobhan and I sat on the bed, listening to the sounds of Connor's security team mobilizing below. Footsteps, urgent voices, the slam of doors. My hand rested on my stomach, feeling the baby's movements, and I prayed silently that this was nothing, just teenagers or a false alarm. Do you love him? Siobhan asked suddenly. Connor, do you still love him? I considered lying, deflecting. But something in her eyes, genuine curiosity without judgment, made me tell the truth. Yes, I admitted. I never stopped, even when I hated him. But I don't know if love is enough. We hurt each other so badly, and trust is harder to rebuild than people think. He loves you too, Siobhan said. I could see it at the gala, the way he looked at you. Even before I knew about the baby, I knew he'd never look at me that way. Our engagement was always a business arrangement, at least for him. I was foolish enough to hope it might become more, but... She shrugged. Some men only love once. Deeply and completely. Connor's that kind of man. Before I could respond, we heard a crash from somewhere below, followed by shouts. Siobhan grabbed my hand, her grip tight with fear. Then gunshots. 3 sharp cracks that made my blood run cold. I stood instinctively, moving toward the door, but Siobhan pulled me back. You can't, she said urgently. Connor said to stay here, to stay safe. You have to think about the baby. She was right. I knew she was right, but every instinct screamed at me to go to Connor, to make sure he was safe. Long minutes passed, each second an eternity. Then footsteps in the hallway, rapid and purposeful. The door handle rattled. "Claire, it's me. Open up." Connor's voice. I rushed to unlock the door and he swept in, blood on his shirt, his expression grim but unhurt. "You're bleeding," I said, reaching for him. "Not mine," he replied shortly. "We caught 2 men on the property, armed, carrying zip ties and chloroform. This was an attempted kidnapping." The room tilted around me. Siobhan caught my arm, steadying me. "Liam sent them," I said, not a question but a statement. Connor nodded. "They're refusing to talk, but the timing is too convenient. Mrs. Brennan's visit was reconnaissance, testing our security, keeping us distracted while the team moved into position." "What happens now?" I asked. Connor's expression was granite hard. "Now I end this, permanently. Liam Brennan crossed the line when he threatened you and our child. I gave him a chance to walk away, to accept the council's decision with dignity. He's chosen war instead. Connor, what are you going to do?" He looked at me, and I saw the ruthless enforcer I'd always known lurked beneath the surface. What I should have done months ago. I'm going to destroy him so completely that he'll never be a threat to anyone again. The cold certainty in his voice should have frightened me. Instead, I felt a fierce satisfaction. Liam Brennan had manipulated us, threatened us, sent men to kidnap me from my home. Whatever Connor had planned, the man had earned it. "Do what you need to do," I said quietly. "But Connor, come back to us, to me and our baby. Promise me you'll come back." His expression softened, and he pulled me into his arms, careful of my stomach. "I promise," he murmured against my hair. "I'll always come back to you, both of you." As he left to coordinate with his security team, I watched from the window as more black SUVs arrived, as men I recognized as Connor's most trusted lieutenants filed into the house. War was coming to Boston's Irish underworld, and Connor McKenna was preparing to win it. For me, for our baby, for the family we might still become. And somewhere in the city, Liam Brennan was about to learn what happened when you threatened the McKenna family. The house felt different after the attempted kidnapping. Security had tripled, armed guards now visible at every entrance, cameras monitoring every inch of the property. I couldn't walk through the gardens without 2 bodyguards shadowing me at a discreet distance. The gilded cage had become a fortress, beautiful, but unmistakably confining. Connor had been gone for 3 days. He'd left the morning after the attack, kissing my forehead and promising to return as soon as Liam was neutralized. A word that carried ominous implications I tried not to examine too closely. Mrs. Chen assured me this was normal, that the business sometimes required Connor's personal attention for extended periods. But the worry etched into her weathered face told a different story. I stood in the nursery, now complete with sage-green walls, a white crib, and the rocking chair that had finally arrived. My hand rested on my swollen belly, feeling the baby's increasingly vigorous movements. 7 months along now, the pregnancy impossible to hide and increasingly uncomfortable. My back ached constantly, my ankles swelled by evening, and sleep came in frustrating 2-hour increments. But none of that mattered compared to the fear gnawing at my chest. Where was Connor? Was he safe? Was he hurt? "Still no word?" Siobhan asked from the doorway. She'd become my unlikely companion during Connor's absence, the 2 of us bonding over our shared worry and the strange circumstances that had brought us together. "Nothing," I said, checking my phone again even though I'd looked at it 30 seconds ago. "He said he'd call when he could, but—" "Connor's careful," Siobhan interrupted gently. "Paranoid even. He won't use traceable communications when he's handling sensitive business. It's probably a good sign that we haven't heard anything. If something had gone wrong, his men would have told us." I wanted to believe her, but the knot in my stomach refused to loosen. "What do you think he's doing? Exactly?" Siobhan moved to sit in the new rocking chair, testing it with a gentle push. dismantling my father's empire, piece by piece. Connor's methodical when he wants to be. He won't just attack directly. That's too risky, too messy. He'll find every weak point in my father's organization and exploit them simultaneously. Business partners suddenly backing out of deals, politicians withdrawing support, money vanishing from accounts, death by 1,000 cuts. That sounds like it would take weeks, not days, I said. It would, if Connor hadn't been planning for this possibility all along, Siobhan replied. My father isn't the only one who plays the long game. Connor's been building contingencies since he took over the McKenna family businesses. Insurance policies, leverage, information that could be weaponized if needed. He just never had a reason to use them before. Until now, I said quietly. Until Liam threatened his family. Until Liam threatened you, Siobhan corrected. Don't underestimate how much you mean to Connor, Claire. I watched him during our engagement, saw how he looked at photographs of you when he thought no one was watching. He never got over you. This isn't just about protecting his child. It's about protecting the woman he loves. The words should have warmed me, should have eased the fear. Instead, they made it worse. Because men in love did foolish things, took unnecessary risks, made mistakes born of emotion rather than calculation. My phone finally rang, and I grabbed it with trembling hands. Not Connor, but an unknown number. My thumb hovered over the decline button before something made me answer. Hello? Mrs. McKenna. A man's voice, heavily accented. Russian, I realized with a chill. Or should I say Ms. Sutton? I understand the divorce was finalized some months ago. Who is this? I demanded, even as Siobhan's eyes went wide with alarm. A friend, the voice replied. Or perhaps an enemy. That depends entirely on you. I'm calling with a message regarding Connor McKenna's current situation. My heart stopped. What situation? Where is he? Safe, for now. Though that could change very quickly. You see, Ms. Sutton, your ex-husband has been quite busy these past few days, destroying businesses, ruining reputations, making powerful men very angry, men who have long memories and even longer reach. If you've hurt him, we haven't touched him, the man interrupted. Yet, but we could, very easily, unless you convince him to stop this vendetta against Liam Brennan. Understanding dawned, cold and terrible. You're working with Liam. Mr. Brennan and my organization have mutually beneficial arrangements. His current difficulties create difficulties for us as well. So I'm offering you a deal, Ms. Sutton. Convince Connor to cease his attacks on the Brennan family, and we guarantee his safety. Refuse, and well, accidents happen, especially to men who've made as many enemies as Connor McKenna. I don't have that kind of influence over him, I said, hating how my voice shook. The man laughed, a sound devoid of humor. You're carrying his child. You have more influence than you realize. 3 days, Ms. Sutton. Convince him to stand down or face the consequences. And please don't bother trying to trace this call. We're not amateurs. The line went dead. I stood frozen, the phone still pressed to my ear, until Siobhan gently took it from my hand. What did they say? She asked urgently. Claire, what did they say? I told her, the words spilling out in a rush. When I finished, Siobhan's face had gone pale. The Bratva, she whispered. My father must have called in his alliance with the Russian mob. Claire, this is bad. The Bratva doesn't make empty threats. I have to warn Connor, I said, already moving toward the door. I have to... How? Siobhan caught my arm. You said yourself he's not answering his phone. He's dark, unreachable, probably deliberately so he can't be traced or tracked. There's no way to contact him. She was right, and the helplessness of it made me want to scream. Connor was out there, dismantling Liam's empire, completely unaware that he'd just acquired a new and deadly enemy. An enemy that had my phone number, that knew about the baby, that could reach me even within the supposed safety of the McKenna estate. There has to be someone who knows where he is, I insisted. His security team, his lieutenants, someone. Marco, Siobhan said suddenly. Connor's second in command. He's here, managing estate security. If anyone knows how to reach Connor, it's him. We found Marco in Connor's office, reviewing security footage from the perimeter cameras. He was a mountain of a man, 6.5 feet of solid muscle with a scarred face that had seen countless fights. But his eyes were intelligent and kind when he looked up at our intrusion. "Ms. Sutton, Ms. Brennan, is everything all right?" I told him about the call, watching his expression darken with each word. When I finished, he was already pulling out his phone. "This changes things," he said grimly. "The boss needs to know immediately. The Bratva aren't like Liam's Irish crews. They don't follow the same rules, don't have the same honor codes. If they've decided Connor's a problem, they'll come at him hard and without warning." "Can you reach him?" I asked desperately. Marco hesitated. "There's an emergency protocol, a way to get messages to him even when he's dark. But Ms. Sutton, you need to understand. If I use it, I'm pulling him out of whatever operation he's running. It could compromise weeks of planning, put his men at risk, maybe even let Liam slip through our fingers." "I don't care," I said fiercely. "I don't care about Liam or vengeance or any of it. I care about Connor coming home alive. Use the protocol." Marco studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "He's a lucky man, having someone like you waiting for him." He made the call, speaking in rapid Irish Gaelic that I couldn't follow. When he hung up, he looked grim. "Message delivered. He'll call when he can, but it might be a few hours. In the meantime, we're going to full lockdown. No one in or out without my personal authorization." The hours crawled by with agonizing slowness. Siobhan and I waited in the living room, Mrs. Chen bringing tea that went cold and untouched. Marco appeared periodically with updates. Additional security arriving, perimeter expanded, safe room prepared in case of attack. Each update made the reality of our situation more terrifying. It was nearly midnight when Connor finally called. "Claire." Just my name, but I heard the exhaustion and worry in his voice. Marco said there was a threat. "Are you all right? Is the baby—" "We're fine," I interrupted. "But Connor, the Bratva called. They're working with Liam, and they threatened you. Said if you don't stop going after him, they'll—" My voice broke. "They'll kill you." Silence on the other end of the line, stretching so long I thought we'd been disconnected. "Connor, I'm here," he said finally. "Just processing." The Bratva involvement explains some things. Resources Liam's been able to access that shouldn't have been available to him. I should have anticipated this. "What are you going to do?" I asked, dreading the answer. "Come home," Connor said simply. "I'm coming home to you and our baby. The vendetta against Liam can wait." Relief flooded through me so powerfully my knees went weak. "Really? Just like that? You think I'd choose revenge over you?" Connor's voice was soft. "Claire, you and our child are everything. Liam, the Bratva, all of it. It's secondary to keeping you safe. I'll be there in 3 hours, maybe less if traffic cooperates." True to his word, Connor's SUV rolled through the gates 2 hours and 47 minutes later. I was waiting in the foyer, having been unable to sit still, despite Mrs. Chen's urgings to rest. When he walked through the door, I saw the evidence of his 3-day absence. Exhaustion written in every line of his face. His usually immaculate appearance rumpled, a bruise darkening his jaw. But he was alive. He was home. I walked into his arms without thinking, felt them close around me, careful of my pregnant belly. He buried his face in my hair, and I felt him shudder with what might have been a sob or simply released tension. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "I'm so sorry I put you through this. I was so focused on making Liam pay, I didn't think about how it would affect you, how you'd worry." "Shh," I interrupted, pulling back enough to look at his face. "You're here now. That's what matters." Connor's hand moved to my stomach, his expression transforming as the baby kicked against his palm. "How's our little troublemaker?" "Active," I said, smiling despite everything. "I think they've been practicing gymnastics, or kickboxing, possibly both simultaneously." He laughed, the sound rusty but genuine. "Taking after their mother, then, strong and stubborn." We stood there in the foyer, wrapped in each other, until Marco cleared his throat diplomatically. "Boss, we should talk. There are developments you need to know about." Connor nodded, his arm still around my waist. "My office." "Claire, you should rest." "No," I said firmly. "Whatever's happening, I'm part of it. No more protecting me from information. We're in this together, remember?" Something warm flashed in Connor's eyes. "Together," he agreed. In his office, Marco laid out the situation with clinical efficiency. During Connor's 3-day campaign against Liam, he'd succeeded in destroying approximately 60% of the Brennan family's legitimate business interests. Shell companies dissolved, real estate deals collapsed, political allies publicly distancing themselves. Liam was financially crippled and politically isolated, but the cost had been Connor's exposure. The Bratva, who'd been silent partners in several of Liam's ventures, had lost millions in the collapse, and they wanted compensation, either in money or blood. "How much money?" Connor asked. Marco winced. 20 million, to be delivered within a week, or they start targeting McKenna interests, starting with the shipping contracts in the harbor. "And if I pay?" Connor asked, his voice neutral. "They agree to sever ties with Liam, leave you alone to finish what you started with the Brennan family. It's essentially a buyout. You're purchasing their neutrality." I watched Connor process this, saw the calculations running behind his eyes. 20 million was a staggering sum, but I knew the McKenna family businesses generated hundreds of millions annually. It was painful, but not crippling. "Tell them I'll pay," Connor said finally. "But I want guarantees, written agreements, witnessed by neutral parties. The Bratva leaves my family alone, and in exchange, they get their money and walk away from Liam Brennan permanently." "Boss, if you pay them, you're essentially letting Liam off the hook," Marco protested. "All that work, all that exposure, for what? He's wounded but not destroyed. He'll rebuild eventually." "I don't care," Connor said flatly. "Claire and the baby's safety is worth more than revenge. We've hurt Liam enough that he'll never regain his former power. That'll have to be sufficient." After Marco left to arrange the payment and negotiations, Connor and I were finally alone. He sank into his desk chair with a groan, rubbing his face with both hands. "I thought I was doing the right thing," he said quietly, "going after Liam, making him pay for what he did to us. But all I accomplished was painting a target on your back. Again. I keep making the same mistakes, Claire, thinking I know best, acting without considering the consequences for you." I moved to perch on the edge of his desk, taking his hands in mine. "You were protecting us. Maybe not in the way I would have chosen, but your intentions were good. And Connor, you listened when I asked you to come home. You chose us over revenge. That means something." He looked up at me, vulnerability naked in his eyes. I was so angry. At Liam, at myself, at the entire situation. I wanted to make him suffer the way I suffered when I thought I'd lost you forever. But you're right. Revenge isn't worth your safety. Nothing is. "So what happens now?" I asked. Connor stood, his hands settling on my waist, careful and reverent. Now we focus on what matters. This baby. His thumbs stroked my belly gently. Our family. Building something real and lasting. Everything else is just noise. And Liam? Will live with his ruined reputation and diminished power. The council has stripped him of authority. His businesses are crippled. His political connections severed. He's essentially been neutered. That's punishment enough. Connor's expression hardened slightly. Though if he ever threatens you or our child again, I'll finish what I started. Bratva or no Bratva. I believed him. And strangely, that certainty was comforting. The next weeks passed in relative calm. Connor arranged the payment to the Bratva, receiving ironclad guarantees of non-interference in exchange. True to their word, they severed all ties with Liam Brennan, leaving him truly isolated. Reports filtered back of Liam withdrawing from public life, his family scattered, his empire in ruins. Connor threw himself into preparing for the baby with the same intensity he brought to everything. He attended every doctor's appointment, asked endless questions about labor and delivery, read parenting books with the focus of a man studying for the most important exam of his life. And slowly, carefully, we rebuilt what had been broken between us. It wasn't easy. Trust, once shattered, couldn't be repaired overnight. But Connor kept his promise. No more secrets, no more decisions made for my own good. He asked my opinion on everything, from nursery furniture to security protocols, to whether Siobhan should continue staying at the estate. I voted yes, appreciating her friendship and support. One evening, 3 weeks after his return, Connor found me in the nursery, folding tiny onesies and sleepers. I was 8 months pregnant now, huge and uncomfortable, counting down the weeks until I could meet our child. I have something for you, he said, holding out a small velvet box. My heart stuttered. Connor, it's not what you think, he interrupted quickly. Or maybe it is, but not exactly. Just open it, please. Inside the box was a ring, but not a traditional engagement ring. Instead, it was a delicate band of intertwined white and rose gold, set with small diamonds that caught the light. Beautiful but understated, elegant without being ostentatious. It's a promise ring, Connor explained, his voice uncharacteristically nervous. I know we're not ready for marriage again. Maybe we never will be. But Claire, I want you to know that I'm committed to this. To us. To our family. Whether that's as husband and wife or co-parents or something in between, I'm all in. This ring is my promise that I'm not going anywhere. That I'll keep showing up. Keep trying. Keep proving that you can trust me. Tears spilled down my cheeks, hormones making me more emotional than usual. It's perfect, I managed. You're perfect. Well, not perfect. You're stubborn and overprotective, and you still make decisions too quickly sometimes. But you're trying, and that matters. Connor slipped the ring onto my right hand, then brought my fingers to his lips. I love you, Claire Sutton. I never stopped, and I never will. Whatever the future holds, that's my constant. I love you too, I admitted, the words easier than I expected. I'm still scared, still worried about all the ways this could go wrong. But I love you, and I want to try, to see if we can build something better than what we had before. He kissed me then, gentle and sweet, and full of promise. And for the first time in months, I allowed myself to hope that maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. 4 weeks later, on a snowy February morning, our daughter arrived. 8 pounds, 3 ounces of perfection, with Connor's dark hair and my hazel eyes and lungs that announced her displeasure at being evicted from her comfortable home. Connor cried when the nurse placed her in his arms, tears streaming down his face as he stared at the tiny life we'd created. "She's perfect," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Claire, she's absolutely perfect." "What should we name her?" I asked, exhausted but elated, watching my daughter's father fall completely in love. Connor looked at me, then back at our baby. "Grace," he said softly, "because that's what brought us back together. Grace and second chances. Grace McKenna Sutton. Our miracle. Our second chance. Our future." Epilogue. 3 years later. Grace's laughter echoed through the estate gardens as she chased butterflies, her dark curls bouncing, her little legs pumping with determined enthusiasm. I watched from the terrace, one hand resting on my swollen belly. 7 months pregnant with our second child, a boy we'd already named Patrick after my father. Connor appeared beside me, wrapping his arms around me from behind, his hands settling over mine on my stomach. "She's going to be disappointed when she realizes she can't actually catch them," he murmured against my hair. "Let her dream," I replied, leaning back into his warmth. "She has plenty of time to learn about disappointment." 3 years. 3 years since that night in the clinic when I'd first seen our daughter's image on an ultrasound screen. 3 years since the mistaken text that had brought Connor back into my life. 3 years of rebuilding trust, learning to love honestly, creating a family that was messy and complicated and absolutely real. We'd married again, quietly, a year after Grace's birth. Just immediate family and close friends, vows we wrote ourselves promising honesty and partnership instead of obedience and honor. Connor had fully legitimized his businesses, stepping away from the darker aspects of his inheritance to build something Grace and Patrick could be proud of. Liam Brennan had died 6 months ago, alone and forgotten, his empire dissolved, his family scattered. Connor hadn't attended the funeral. Neither had I. Some doors were better left closed. Siobhan had become Grace's godmother and my closest friend, using her grandmother's inheritance to start a nonprofit helping women leave dangerous situations. She'd found her purpose, her strength, her voice. "Mama! Daddy! Look!" Grace called, holding up a dandelion with the pride of someone who'd conquered Everest. "Beautiful, sweetheart," I called back. "Bring it here." She ran toward us, all joy and innocence, unaware of the complicated history that had brought her into existence. And as Connor lifted her into his arms, as she chattered about butterflies and flowers and the baby brother who would be here soon, I felt something settle in my chest. Peace. Hard-won and precious, but peace nonetheless. Connor caught my eye over Grace's head, his gray eyes warm with love and gratitude. I smiled back, touching the promise ring that still graced my right hand alongside my wedding band. We'd been broken and rebuilt, manipulated and freed, destroyed and reborn, and through it all, we'd found our way back to each other. Not through grand gestures or destiny or fate, but through showing up, day after day, choosing love and honesty and partnership. Grace squirmed to be put down, already chasing another butterfly. Connor's hand found mine, our fingers intertwining with the ease of long practice. "Happy?" he asked softly. I looked at our daughter, felt our son moving beneath my heart, stood beside the man I'd loved and lost and found again. "Yes," I said simply. Finally, completely yes. And it was the truest thing I'd ever said.